Hi guys, and welcome to the second video for graphing any rational equation where m is equal to n. Okay, so again, we're picking up from kind of a previous video here where we had this equation. We found that this is actually going to have no x-intercepts because when we tried to set the numerator equal to 0, we ended up trying to take the square root of a negative number, which we can't do. So no x-intercepts, but we do have some vertical asymptotes. We've got the vertical asymptotes it's the square root of 12, which gives us about positive 3.5 or negative 3.5. So we're going to come over here to negative 3.5, draw in our lovely vertical asymptote here, and then we can do the same thing over at positive 3.5, and there are our two vertical asymptotes that are going to help us with our graph. And now we're going to do the horizontal asymptote, which remember is for when m equals n, you just take the numerator, the leading coefficient of the numerator, and divide it by the leading coefficient of the denominator. So negative 5 divided by 2, which gives us negative 2.5. So down here at y equals negative 2.5, this is where our horizontal asymptote is going to be. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to start plugging in these values, which I have already done for you. So we would plug in this negative 4 into this equation for x and solve. And so when we plug in negative 4, we end up with negative 6.8. When we plug in negative 5, we end up with negative 4.9. And when we plug in negative 6, we end up with negative 3.8. Okay, so we can go ahead and plot these on our graph here. So negative 4 is this line just past our asymptote, and down almost all the way to negative 7 down here. So there's our first point. Negative 5, 4.9 is almost down to negative 5. And then negative 6, 3.8 would be almost all the way to negative 4, but not quite. Okay, and so again, we can just draw in our smooth curve here where it's going to get close to the asymptote but never quite reach it, and that way as well. Okay, and so like with the rest of our graphs, we have a really nice symmetry going on here where we have on the left and on the right, the graph is going to be doing very similar things. So the values to the right over here are actually going to be exactly the same. So again, we're going to have negative 6.8, negative 4.9, and negative 3.8. So we can go ahead and plot these. So for negative 6.8 is about right there. 5 negative 4.9 is about right here. And 6 negative 3.8 is about right here. So again, we're going to just go ahead and draw in our curves, approaching those asymptotes but never quite reaching them, and with our arrows on the end. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look in the middle here. Now in the middle, usually in the ones we've done before, we've already had an x-intercept, but since we don't, we want to plug in 0 for x to find what the y-intercept will be. So when we do that, we're going to find that we end up with, when we plug in negative 2, we're going to get that y is positive 1.4. When we plug in 0, we're going to get that it's almost 0, but not quite. It's 0.1. And then when we plug in positive 2, we're going to get, again, 1.4. So now we can go ahead and go over to our graph and plot these. So negative 2, 1.4, that's about 1.5, so it's about right there. Okay, 0, comma 0.1 is going to be just right above the origin right there. And then positive 2, comma 1.4 is, again, it's about 1.5. It's right there. So now we can draw in our curve here. And again, we want it to approach the asymptotes but not quite reach them on that side, and go through the point here and on that side as well. And there is our finished graph.